But I'm telling you on this issue, with full candor and a pure soul and a pure heart, if you follow that advice, you are literally putting yourself in danger. So, folks, it's been obviously a rough weekend. Many of you heard the story about this attack in this church in Texas near Fort Worth. And ladies and gentlemen, astonishingly, within 6 seconds, and I only say that not because I'm astonished, but because the media and liberal intelligentsia, fake intelligentsia out there, will tell you that more guns equals more crime, and bringing guns into a church or a school environment is going to create a danger, not understanding that the danger is brought in by the bad guy who's going to bring the gun in anyway. Fairly obvious to the intelligent people who watch my show. Obviously not fairly obvious to the dopey liberals who watch, and the media people who just want to take away your right to defend yourself. So here is a picture courtesy of Twitter I found with a little diagram. This is a picture. Now, I know some of you on my audio podcast, forgive me, I rarely do this, but it's important. If you can check out the picture, go to youtube.com/Bongino. If you can't, it's a photo laid out of the church. It was being live streamed on YouTube. Keep that up for a moment. This service was being live streamed on YouTube. So there is video of this murder. We watched a murder happen. Guy walks in with a trench coat, pulls out a shotgun at point blank range, kills an innocent victim. Now, in the photo you'll see, and which I'll describe to you, there is a church, I guess an usher or a volunteer security service man in the church by the name of Jack Wilson. This hero pulls out his firearm. He's obviously trained. Apparently he had some affiliation with a gun range in the past in law enforcement. And what looks like about what would you say, Joe? You'll see it on the screen. Keep that up. About, I don't know, 25 feet, maybe 30 feet?
Yeah, 20, 30
I'm guessing,
feet,
because the scale's obviously rough with given this picture taken from YouTube. Engages the gunman, engages him, this patriot, and manages to hit and kill this gunman, thankfully, before he engages in more of a mass homicide and takes him out right there. We have it labeled on the screen, but that's what I'm describing for those of you on the audio podcast. Again, I don't like to do that often. Forgive me. It'll always be an audio podcast first. But this picture is important, and if you have the time, please check it out, youtube.com/Dan Bongino. You can see the photo of what this guy, this patriot, Jack Wilson, did to engage this lunatic, this murderer, with the firearm. Folks, I think it was a headshot at about 30 feet, 25, 30 feet. For those of you who are trained with firearms, have trained with firearms, for those of you in law enforcement, I spent over 15 years of my life in law enforcement. I spent my whole life around firearms. That is an exceedingly difficult shot. But there are a couple of lessons we can take from this before we get to the dreadful politicizing, again, of this event by dopey, silly politicians who just can't seem to remove their heads from their rectums and talk in common sense. I said on Fox and Friends this morning, the video will be in the show notes today at Bongino.com, the notes that accompany the podcast. If you want our show notes emailed to you daily, Bongino.com/newsletter. I have the link to my appearance on Fox and Friends this morning where I told you this, and I'll say it again on my show because it matters. Anyone telling you that the answer to bad guys with guns is not a good guy with a firearm to defend against those bad guys is literally putting your life in danger. This maniac entered this church with the clear intent to engage in an act of murder right there, and would have murdered probably many more people if not for the actions of this hero, Jack Wilson, who took this guy out. Indisputable. The fact that this had to be politicized is really disgusting, but a couple of the takeaways here. Number one, training matters. Clearly, Mr. Wilson had trained with that firearm. You can see if I didn't put the video on for a number of reasons, folks. I do my best to keep the show family friendly, and there is actual video. You're free to look it up. If you have the stomach for it, I encourage you to do so, because there are lessons that are probably more profound in the video than just the photo we put up, which is a little more family friendly. I mean, your kids can look at it. There's nothing in there. There's no blood or gore. But if you can see in the video that he's trained, instantly gets his firearm out, hands to the eye level, engages, immediately takes out the target, right on target. He just did what he had to do. He was clearly trained in accessing and using that firearm. Sadly, of course, these things are always politicized by the left, but showing you how they are, I'm not kidding. These people on the left are actively putting you in danger, folks. I am not kidding. By recommending things like don't arm yourselves in a church, we don't need more guns in schools and armed teachers, as if I say this often and I mean it. What I'm trying to get in your head. So it's obvious now that these murderers and these homicidal maniacs, whether it's a school, God forbid, a church, whatever it may be that enters these locations, if you don't have a firearm, I'm unsure as a liberal what rationally in your head other option you think is better. I'm stumbling over my words here, not because because I'm trying to get in your head as to what else you think is going to work. This guy had a shotgun underneath his trench coat. You're suggesting to me with a straight face that you'd rather that church have been protected by people with, what are you going to do, inflict a paper cut? You're going to throw rocks? I don't understand what you think is a better option. But this is video of Joe Biden, leading Democrat candidate for president, attacking the Republican governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, for suggesting that it may be a good idea for people to defend themselves in a church using firearms. God forbid this is to happen. Listen to this video where Biden, who I'm telling you is putting you in danger with recommendations like this, tells you how you're irrational and Greg Abbott, Republican governor of Texas, is irrational if you're even thinking about carrying a firearm in church. Listen to this.
It is irrational, with all due respect to the governor of Texas, irrational what they're doing. On the very day you see a mass shooting, I guess the numbers now, I was on a plane the last 2.5 hours, I think up to 5 killed. And we're talking about loosening access to have guns, be able to take them into places of worship, store them in school. I mean, it's just absolutely irrational. It's totally irrational.
Again, in the interest of honoring the victims, I am containing my commentary from losing my marbles here on the show. Because, folks, we can disagree with Democrats and Democrats can disagree with us. That's the beauty of a constitutional republic. But I'm telling you on this issue, with full candor and a pure soul and a pure heart, if you follow that advice, you are literally putting yourself in danger. If you have the means and the ability and the willingness, that's important. Some people don't want to carry, and that's fine. That's a choice. That's your choice. That's okay. But understand that we live in it's a very safe country. There's no need to be hyperbolic or overestimate the threat. The chances of you being caught in this are exceedingly slim. But suggesting to people that it is irrational to want to defend themselves against people like this who do exist, and these incidents sadly do happen, is the absolute height of imbecility. Irrational to want to defend yourself against being killed by a murderer in a church who has a weapon that you can't counteract except if you have one yourself or someone else around you is trained. Ladies and gentlemen, do not take this man's advice.
You just heard The Dan Bongino Show. You can also get Dan's podcasts on iTunes or SoundCloud and follow Dan on Twitter 24/7 @DBongino.